I do think that creative people need a little bit of a they face different challenges than other fields. And I think partly because we put a lot of our heart and soul into the work that we do. It's really impactful and changed me a lot, because it made me realize that that's the type of work I want to be doing, but also when the whole team is on board and the whole team want to make sure that that's happening, things change. And it doesn't have to be that we're all experts in inclusion or we're all experts in a certain way. It also taps into our humanity. And it's really nice seeing that it resonates with other people too. So it's not just me feeling this way, but other people are feeling similar things. And I think that's how we create change, by collectively moving towards something.
Hi, Ida, and welcome to the BockPress podcast number 2, first one in English speaking. I'm very happy to have you here. For an intro, you have been working for IDEO, who pioneered human-centered design and design thinking. You've been a competitive swimmer in the past, and now you're working as a freelancer. And welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really happy to be here.
Awesome. With the first part, your creative and personal journey, you gave a talk recently at the Push conference.
Yeah.
And how was it for you speaking in front of so many people, and how did you prepare for it, for public speaking?
Yeah, I will definitely say that I'm one of those people who need to prepare a lot. So when I know I'm doing a talk, I like to work on the actual deck a lot that I'm going to be using, and then just rehearsing a lot is super important for me. I listened to this public speaking coach, and he said something like, we don't rise to the occasion, we fall back on preparation. So I try to kind of remind myself of that when I'm trying to do something. So I'm not the person that can just wing something.
Probably most of us aren't. Probably most of us can't just go and wing a talk unless we've given it plenty of times before.
Yeah, and exactly.
Do you practice in front of a mirror? Do you practice with a friend that you do a phone call with them and tell them all about the talk? What's your go-to method?
Yeah, I typically try to get pretty far ahead on my own with writing what I'm going to be saying. But then when I'm going to practice how I'm actually performing or saying it, then I like to go to a friend and then do it in front of a friend. And then they can give me feedback right away, which is super helpful. And also
very scary also. Yeah, it's just putting yourself out there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
First write out everything and then condense it, and then probably a bit more freestyle once you've done all the preparation for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Super cool. What was the subject of the talk also? What was your message you wanted to share with the world?
So
designers, UX designers.
Exactly. The talk is called "If You Want to Be Creative, You Can't Be Certain." So it's about navigating uncertainty in the creative field. And yeah, it was funny because when I was preparing, I was feeling very nervous and a lot of imposter syndrome. And in my talk, I talk about imposter syndrome and not how to overcome it, but how to embrace it. So I was trying to kind of put my own lessons on myself as I was preparing for it.
Yeah, giving a talk also has inherently a lot of uncertainty, right? How is the day going to be? How is the audience going to react to it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Super cool. And for the social design, that I noticed reading through your blog, it's a recurring theme that you care a lot about social design. And why is it so central to your work? What makes social design for you? What's the field about?
Yeah, I think I've always been really interested in sort of how can I use my skills to make the world a better place in the smallest way, or in big ways or small ways. And it wasn't really, I haven't really had a specific moment where I felt like, okay, this is the moment when I realized that I want to do social design. I think it's always kind of been in the background of what I'm doing, even if I haven't always been working on clients in the social space, I've always felt like this is what I want to do in the end. So even my first internship out of college was with Amnesty International. So even then I knew that I wanted to do something with social justice or climate justice. And now I just feel like I want to do it even more. So that's sort of my focus in my freelance practice.
So you've already been leaning into social design with what you've been doing, and then you finally had the term to put on top of it, and it's like, oh yeah, I've been doing social design. And then you can be like, okay, like where can I do more social design in that context?
Yeah, exactly. And also now when I'm freelancing, I can lean into it even more because I'm free to do so, and I can kind of pick the client I work with.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it makes it easier as well.
Oh yes, you can, and then you can get more of the clients that do also that do good for the world. And
yeah,
in your blog, you also mentioned that like some clients or some areas you don't work with, like you have like strong ethics or strong morals, and like what fields do you choose not to work with? Which ones are blacklisted for you, and also why?
Yeah, I think it's a big question because I think it also depends on the situation that you find yourself in, for example. And if you have the privilege to say no to certain things, there's a lot of things right now that I don't want to work for, but I know it also comes from a position of privilege where I can be a little pickier at the moment. But yeah, I think something like I've had situations in the past where I was asked once to work on a gun manufacturer, for example, and that is something that I don't want to do. And I was able in that moment to say no and say, hey, I don't want to work on this client. But I was also pretty far in my career, and I don't know if I was younger or if I didn't have that experience, if I would have been able to say no in a situation like that. So that's a very obvious one, I think, for a lot of people. But I think also it comes from a position of privilege, and it comes from a position of where I felt like I had the power to say no in a situation like that.
Yeah, still takes like, even with a lot of power, like it still takes a lot of courage to then say no to it, and to be like, okay, like this I don't want to do. Like I think as a freelancer also it's easier to say no to certain projects or clients, but if you're part of a team working on it, then it's like you also have to navigate that with like the leadership team, or even if you're part of the leadership team with the CEO. And I think like there is a lot of like a long tail that comes with it, and like it's kind of like, can you do, like what's the reputation of the people, how is their relationships, like leaning into that, into like the solution finding, like root causes versus symptoms. Why is it so important to focus on the root causes?
Sort of systems design and understanding root causes is something that I've gotten into a lot more lately, and it's something I want to dive even deeper into.
Oh yeah.
And I think especially when you work in social design, you have to think about the root causes of something, because otherwise I feel like you can end up causing harm. So if you're a lot of the times when we're focusing on the system, we might make individual problems and then tell individuals that, hey, you are the problem and you have to fix yourself and you have to solve it. But it's actually so much larger. And I find this a lot, for example, if you're working in the climate space and you say that, hey, you need to get better at recycling, individuals need to do their part and all this stuff, which I think is really important. We have to also do that. But if we cannot talk about the larger system at play, then we're not actually going to create any long-term change. And I think that's kind of the balance between both. I mean, I think we can do things now and also think about the larger system, but I think it's important to recognize that there are underlying causes that are making people behave in a certain way or that are causing these issues. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, like looking at the incentives that people have, like for example, the PET system that we have in Germany, where if you if you buy a bottle in the store, then there's like 0.25 or 25 cents on it, and then people are much more likely to return it, like for the longer run. So it's still this bigger system, but every individual also matters to do their part in it, even in a system with great incentives.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are ways to have conversations around what is the narrative that we are kind of telling. So we're telling the narrative of individuals need to do all these things, but then we also have to talk about what is the underlying system and what are actually the responsibilities of businesses or of governments or of like what laws do we actually need in order to enable these behaviors. And I think that's really important, because otherwise we put all the pressure on the individual, and then we're saying, you're bad for not recycling, or you need to do all these extra things, but the system is not making it easy for you to do it. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think if we put too much blame on the individual, that can also lead that people are like, yeah, I'm doing my part, but I'm still getting blamed for it all. I think it can lead to that like fatigue from people that a lot of people have. Like, it's like, why even bother to do like the smaller things if like at the bigger thing there is such big things going on? But I think that's like a bit like one-sided to be like, yeah, like my part doesn't matter. It's just like the politicians, they need to figure it out. It's just giving around like the responsibility from one to the next and hoping for everybody that they figure it out. But it's
exactly. And I think there's room for both. We can do both.
Yeah. Like one thing also that stood out that you wrote or said was like creatives need more sunshine. And I think that's a very significant part for many people working in the creative industry. I think especially in agencies that are constantly overworked and demanding clients and projects and all of that. Like, how do you find the time to breathe and enjoy sunshine in this hectic world that it can be?
I think, I don't know if I have a great sort of tip or a solution to that, but I do think that creative people need a little bit of a different, they face different challenges than other fields. And I think partly because we put a lot of our heart and soul into the work that we do. I remember when I first started out, I took a lot of the critiques that I was facing as an attack on me. And I felt that saying my work is bad, that means I am bad and I need to change. And I think
there's constantly feedback, right? It's like, it's just when you work, like you always get feedback.
Exactly. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on us that we want to we feel a lot and we want to put our hearts and souls into the work. But then how do we nurture ourselves and how do we protect ourselves in order to be able to sustain our work and stay joyful in the work that we're doing? And I think, I mean, that's something that I've faced a lot, where there's been times where I didn't really enjoy the creative work anymore, and everything kind of started feeling like a checklist, and it's like, get one thing done so I can do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Cut the next tail of the dragon, like it is just really growing all the time.
Exactly. And
I can feel that sometimes.
And especially when you want to do creative things and you want to expand your mind, and it's quite frustrating and it's hard to navigate, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Did it make a difference for you, like when you worked for like a company versus for when you work for yourself now? Like, is it easier for you to do creative work, especially having worked for like an established company before, or like a really, really proper name?
I think I think, like you mentioned, both sides has ups and downs, or positives and negatives. I think what I miss a lot as a freelancer is when I worked, for example, at IDEO, I had a team of creative people that brought a lot of energy, that brought a lot of skills. You could collaborate, and I miss that a lot. It's usually not the same when you're collaborating with clients. It's a different dynamic. So I miss that. But I think in the moment, I'm right now in a moment where I'm trying to balance how much work I want to do. And I'm trying to do a little bit less at the moment, which is like hard to say because I've always pride myself on working really hard. But I'm trying to invest a little more time into my personal projects and into myself as well. And then I feel like that helps me a lot just to find a little bit of a better balance. There's no other pressure from, being there for a team, being there for a company, being there in 100% capacity. So yeah, in the moment that feels good.
That's awesome. So you enjoyed the team aspect of working on the projects and having like the sparring partners, fast-paced, moving something forward. And then like now you have a lot more like fine control over like the amount of projects you do, how you do them, and like that gives you more freedom to just be or focus also on other projects. Like it's more, it's a different kind of balance than probably to do now.
Yeah, but like you mentioned before, when you're part of a team, there's other people who have other skills and can do other things. And when you're freelancing or self-employed, you're kind of having to do all the things, and it's quite challenging as well.
Yeah, like I think sometimes also coming as a freelancer to bigger projects, like also can be like that feeling of being inside of a team, or like hiring your own people, building your own team, like with the people you enjoy, going like the entrepreneurial route or business owner route is also an option. But I definitely also in my own journey felt that there is more time where I just work on the projects. I like it, especially in the first few years, and kind of also depends on you probably also where you wanna take it, like whether it's more just do freelancing for longer or found your own agency, maybe even. There's a lot of options also to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. We have part one. And then now we have some quick questions for in between.
Okay.
So it's like without context and like just a quick answer. Like you can do like a one-word answer, or you can also do like one sentence, like whatever comes to your mind. First question: Swedish food or German food?
Swedish food.
Oh, one short moment of hesitation. Huh?
Yes.
Next one, you might be biased. Spotify or YouTube Music or Apple Music?
Spotify.
Spotify.
Yeah.
Is that the UX designer in you talking, or is it the habit?
It's a Swedish person in me because it's a Swedish. But I've been reading a lot of negative things about Spotify now, so I need to do some more research.
Okay, that's where the ethics are. If you like for your work, like if you can only choose one, is impactful work or enjoyable work more important for you?
Impactful work.
Impactful work, all about the impact.
I mean, it also depends. We use the word impact, and everybody says they're making impact, and I would say positive impact would make sure that positive.
True. Sometimes there's people who have a lot of impact, but not the impact they want to have.
Exactly.
Like okay. Chocolate or gummy bears?
Chocolate.
Chocolate. And big city life or life in countryside?
I would have said big city like a year ago, but I'm more at the moment. I'm also craving a lot of more nature. So I'm thinking about what will be the best setup in the future.
So like 50-50.
Yeah.
And one more that just came. but I forgot which one it was. If you had let's say 10 million euro, what would you do? That's a bit more open-ended.
10 million.
10 million. Cash, all taxes paid,
Oh,
wired
wow.
directly to you. It's not illegal.
I have this. I don't know what it will actually manifest as, but I have this thought that I somehow want to create some kind of intergenerational living situation where people from different generations could live together, and then they could also have common spaces and art spaces where they could, do pottery and then have social settings, but still while having their own space. So having their own, but then also creating a sort of micro community within something like that. And I think 10 million would give me a good amount to actually do this thing.
You can make 10 of those spaces. Or it depends also where, like it sounds a bit like a co-living space. Like I've been to some in the world, like in France, in the mountains, there's a really great one. And the best part about it is you have nature and community. Though most of the co-working, co-living spaces, like they're focused on, I think, people from 22 to 50. But it would be interesting to mix in some older people.
Yeah, and even like if there was a way to have a family, like families and students and older people, retired people, for example, and finding ways, because I have this idea in my head that I believe the community is, right now we're so focused on, creating connections with our friends, our families, but in my mind, I'm like, what does it look like to create communities where the support system expands beyond our closest relatives or our partners, for example? And I think in my head, that could be a solution that helps people, connect more with each other and feel more, they have those extended families that are not actually family, I guess.
Yeah, so makes for a lot more empathy and compassion, probably to live with the people, because I think in our day-to-day life it's very rare that like young people spend time with like older people.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. So, fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I get 10 million.
Yeah, exactly. Without having to do illegal things.
Yeah, exactly.
Second part, inclusive design and broader perspectives. There's a bunch of tools that can guide the work. And you said you're a big fan from like the Microsoft inclusive design tools and things like Cards for Humanity. Can you explain like how such a creative or inclusive design process can take place and how those tools can help?
Yeah, sure. I think that, like you mentioned, there are a lot of tools out there, and there's a lot of practitioners in the inclusive design space who are offering a lot of things for free, and I'm very, very appreciative of that. And I think these tools, so I always struggle with this idea that when we think about inclusive design, we think about creating these perfect experiences, not causing any harm, making sure everything is perfect. And I think sometimes that stops us a little bit from actually doing anything, because we think
perfect is impossible. Yeah,
exactly. And I think some of these tools can help us. So what I've done in the past, for example, like at IDEO, so if we had a design thinking process, we could find moments within the journey where we could infuse some of these tools. So maybe we did an unintended consequences workshop within the project to make sure, okay, what might happen if we put this product in the market? What are some of the unintended consequences? Or using, for example, Cards for Humanity, then you can think about personas in the sense of different people who have many like layers of disabilities or layers of personality traits, and how do those things interact with each other. So you start thinking more of a human from an intersectional lens versus a very singular, this person is this specific thing. No, they have many different layers. And I find that very, very helpful. So finding ways to infuse it into the process versus thinking that, okay, we have to do everything right and we have to be inclusive and we have to, making sure everything is perfect. And I think a lot of the tools can help with that, depending on what you're making and throughout the process.
It's super interesting that like the design part takes more of like a holistic perspective, because like from what I've seen is that often like design and marketing is like the last part that gets added. It's like you have the product creation process, like all the engineering that takes place, and then it's like, oh, now we have the product. Now we need to get it among the people. We need some nice packaging for it. We need to make sure we make marketing in the right channels. But I think it's very novel from how it sounds to also consider like who are the other stakeholders involved, and like how does it affect their life, and maybe even the stakeholders that are not that obvious for it. So like, is that like work that happens like more in the earlier stages, like when also like the product gets created, designed, engineered? Or is it more like once the product is there, then you're like, hey, but wait a moment, like actually we should also think about all the implications. And I can imagine that it's like, sometimes people might be like, hey, like this is extra work. We just wanted to get you to sell our product as much as possible. That's what we're paying you for. And then now you're also saying we should consider this and that person. That costs much more money.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're mentioning now, that it happens in the end, is happens a lot. And that's how to do it. As a designer, I would say the earlier the better. And I think if a product is design led and designers can be a part of the process a lot earlier, it helps everybody. Because like the engineering part is really important, but the human part is also really important. And then on top of that, I think designers can also bring the perspective of the environmental impact that our product might have. So that needs to happen early, because those decisions are big decisions and they need to be thought of earlier. So we're not really, like, to me, it's kind of what we talked about before. Like, we're not kind of putting bandages on or solving these symptoms that might come up. We actually solve the problem, and that is earlier, and help people
for a root cause.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we want to help people with whatever we're making. And then and I think that's sometimes the tension between design sometimes falls into marketing and sometimes it falls into product design. And I think we need to merge the two, and I think the earlier the design happens, the better.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it sounds a bit similar to like with accessible websites, that often people are building like the website and have like the designer create something, and then like later on they're like, oh, but actually requirement is for it to be accessible. But it's goes much more deeper already, like, or in the beginning, like even the branding choice, color choices, and all of that affected. And like it can be changed later, but it's much more cost resource expensive to change things then, because it sometimes might go more fundamental to change it then.
Yeah, and we want to be holistic in our approach. We want to think about the full system before we're actually, making something. And I think that has to happen earlier.
Yeah, definitely agreed. Yeah, for your current project that you do, or can also be a project that you've done lately. Like, how do you make sure that accessibility and inclusivity are like parts of it, or is that like part of like an important part of the projects? Do people come to you because they say, Ida, I want to do like my project and I want to make sure like social design is a part of it, like everybody is taken into account? Like, how does that usually go together in a project when you have a new project coming up?
I think in a way it comes out I would say in 3 different ways. So it's like, who I work with. So picking clients that are in the social impact space, for example, or who are already passionate about these things. And then it comes out also in what we work on. So what type, what you mentioned before, what type of products or what type of solutions that you want to be engaged with and what you don't want to be engaged with. So
no defense deals.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the who, the what, and then also the how. So how are we actually doing it? So making sure, I had somebody tell me this, that you can't create human-centered solutions if you have unhumane conditions for the people doing the work. So how we do the work is super important as well. Making sure that we're working our teams, making sure that how we're engaging with the people we're interviewing, making sure that we're not causing harm, and making sure that we're doing all those things. So I think that's also really important. So I think it comes out more in these smaller moments versus these big grand things that are happening. So it's throughout and it's in many different ways.
So it's much more like integrated in it also from the beginning, and shows like in every step of the way. Like if you say like even in the how do you work together with people and making sure that like people also feel good, let's say, during the work, and that's an important part. That's really cool, because I think oftentimes like that is like not something that people think about, especially when it's just not all numbers and like in terms of impact, what was like a moment that stood out for you where you were like, okay, like the social design really made an impact in life for like a group of people, or whereas like we really managed to make sure that like a person was included or had like positive impacts, where like if the project would have been done conventionally, the person would have been left out?
Yeah, I think when I was at IDEO, we worked on a project. It was in the medical field, and we were testing if a product would work for this rare disease community. So these kids living with a rare disease. So the project was already pretty complex. We were working on a rare disease and we were working with children. And in that project, we really had to make sure that everything we did was done in a way that didn't cause harm to the families or the children, and making sure that we're not adding extra things to their life because they're already living with a rare disease and they're already managing a lot of different things. And I think in that we had a really great team who all kind of from the start felt like this is really important to do this the right way. And we also had advisors, and we had a pediatrician on staff that we met every week, and making sure that we're checking the way we're doing things with people. And then also making sure that we think about who are we serving in this project. So yes, we had a client who had a specific goal that they wanted to achieve, but then we also had the community. So to us, we put the community first, making sure that whatever we suggest has to benefit them. It cannot add anything to their life. And I think it's a very impactful.
You become protectors of the people you serve for. Like even with the clients, like you're like, okay, like we need to make sure like the community is supported.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like the voice of the community, then and
I find that really exactly. And I think it was really impactful and changed me a lot, because it made me realize that that's the type of work I want to be doing, but also it's really nice to be able to, when the whole team is on board and the whole team want to make sure that that's happening, things change. And it doesn't have to be that we're all experts in inclusion or we're all experts in a certain way. It also taps into our humanity and how we can actually make sure we're not causing harm and helping people. So
it's a lot of caring that I perceive in it, and like lots of feeling, and everybody feels connected in it. Creative Mornings is also like an event where you're organizer, and like I wanted to ask you like, how did you become organized, or what made you decide to become organizer for it? And like, yeah, what's your story with Creative Mornings?
Yeah, my story started when I was living in Atlanta, in the US, and I was going to events at Creative Mornings. So for people that are not familiar, Creative Mornings is this once a month lecture series where the creative community gets together and they have breakfast, they listen to a speaker that talks about a specific theme, and it's usually the last Friday of every month. And when
And
I was living
worldwide, almost.
yeah,
So many
exactly.
cities, like I think
Yeah,
200 cities in the world.
yeah, exactly. Over 250 chapters in the world, I think. So 250 cities. And the organization was started in New York by a woman called Tina Roth Eisenberg, and she's known as Swiss Miss. So she had a blog called Swiss Miss, and she was living in Switzerland. Then she moved to New York, and she felt like she didn't have a creative community. So she started this get together, and then it became this global community eventually. And I think I joined as an organizer because when I moved to Munich, I really wanted to get into the creative scene, seeing what other people are doing. And I felt like volunteering was a nice way to do that, rather than just going to the events, for example. And now I've been doing it for 2 years, around 2 years.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh yeah.
I'm really enjoying it. It's a really nice way to meet people.
You also moved to about 2 years ago to Munich then, and
yeah,
that's very bold to become like immediately organizer, but such a great way probably also to connect with people and like to have the regularity of meeting creative people.
Yeah. Yeah, what I really like about the atmosphere is that it's very inviting, and it's a creative community, but it doesn't feel like it's an exclusive club with only some people get to join. I feel like it's a sense of, we have different topics, we have different types of speakers. It's not just creative professionals. And I think that helps a lot. And it's also, I like that it's once a month, and it's a lecture series, and it's like 1.5 hours on a Friday, and then you go back to work. It's low commitment.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great way to meet people. Like I also joined it in Lisbon and like in other cities. Like where was it? I think maybe even Australia some time ago. Like
cool.
it really takes place everywhere, and like just to meet a bunch of people, and they're usually very well connected. I think that's one of the themes that the Creative Morning people have. They're quite well connected with all the agencies. You get to eat really, really nice breakfast, and like it's a great way to start a day.
Yeah, and every month is at a different location, so it's cool too. You get to see different. Some are co-working spaces, some are agencies, some are more creative type of spaces. So you get to see a lot of the city as well, like places you would never get inside of. I like that.
Connect with all different agencies.
Yeah.
Especially big fan.
Like now when I'm working from home, I still get to see what offices look like.
You feel like a regular person working for a moment.
Exactly.
Does it make you miss offices?
Some are really cool. Like some are cool. Which
creative offices probably too.
Yeah.
There could be like a co-working extension to it, but then also probably other people like regularly working there need the offices afterwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking about Munich also, Munich and international perspective, like how is expat life for you in Munich so far, and what made you choose Munich as your place to be?
I came for the job at IDEO. So I was living in the US, and then I moved to Munich for the IDEO job, and that was 3 years ago. And then I was with IDEO 2 years. So that's kind of how I ended up in Munich. I wanted to move from the US to more in the European region to be closer to Sweden, where my family is. And
Sweden.
I felt like Germany is, let's try it. I don't have a specific like, wow, Munich. I've always dreamt about living in Munich. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's my home for now, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, it already feels like home. But it's probably quite a lot of change of pace to living in the US.
Yeah.
Like you can walk everywhere. You have like people are usually chill, but maybe even a bit more like distanced, maybe even I think often in Munich and
Yeah.
Germans, like a bit more international Germans also. How
Yeah.
has it shaped you in like living in Munich? Would you say like there's like a part of you that became German?
I think I'm still working on it. I still feel like there's a lot of quirks about the German culture that I'm learning about and that I'm accepting as a Swedish person. But I find it really interesting, like how different cultures show up and how different types of people show up. And also, I have a lot of international friends here, so it's also, you know, people from the US or people from Spain or people from Italy, and it becomes, you get to see different cultures within Munich as well. So I like that. It's interesting. Sometimes it's frustrating when people are different and you just don't understand. But it's also like learning about.
Yeah, like Munich is great for international friends. Like the Germanest thing, I'm still figuring out myself. Even being born in Munich and having lived there for some time, I think it's like a lifelong thing to figure out.
Yeah.
One guy that I know, like he moved to Sweden like 2 or 3 years ago, and like before or in Germany, he was considered to be very introverted. And then he made some friends like in this like countryside Swedish city, like 30,000 people or something. And like everywhere he went, people told him like, "Hey, you're so outgoing. Like it's like you're so like so much the star of the party." And like for him, it was like, what? Like because he was never considered to be like extroverted in Germany. But it's very interesting, like how the baseline level of like introverted and extroverted, how that changes in a culture. Have you lived in Stockholm before, or like countryside Sweden?
I grew up in the north, so like in the middle of the country, but close to the mountains.
Småland, IKEA,
No,
Småland.
it's called Östersund, so it's close to. Yeah, it's close to, right across from Trondheim in Norway. Close to the mountains, there's a ski resort called Åre, which is I know.
Like Northern Lights there already.
Yeah, there are Northern Lights there. Yeah. But not my family is in Stockholm and Västerås now, which is. But I did not grow up in Stockholm. But I go there now. So.
Yeah. It's good to go back as a visitor.
Yeah, it's definitely easier now when my family is in Stockholm because flying there is easier and you don't have to take a train after. So it's nice.
Yeah, have a place to stay immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
And in terms of future projects, like what is next for you on the horizon? Like what gets you excited for let's say the new year 2025?
Yeah, I can't believe it's a new year.
Yeah, so soon.
Yeah, exactly. I've been working on a personal project that I'm really excited about. It's called DesignShifts. I've been exploring sort of a better future for and through design, and I'm doing it through different shifts. So, for example, how might we move from designing for consumptions to designing for contentment, or how might we move from speed to market to slowing down within our practices and in our lives? And I started last year more as a content series, and then I hosted a couple of events as well that were virtual. And now I'm exploring it in 3 different ways. So theory, which is the writing and kind of researching, and then practice, which is hosting events. So I also want to do in person, and then community. So creating a community around this, which is still something that I don't know if I will do it. I want to do it, but I don't know if it's actually a need. People looking for this sort of like a community for social designers. But yeah, that's what I'm really excited about, and I want to do more of it. And I want to host some in-person events in Munich and maybe Berlin this year, and then write more and collaborate with people. So yeah, I'm excited.
Sounds like a bigger venture. Like it can catalyze a lot of things, and like from what you just described, it's always like to give like a counter force, right? Like it's like what's the traditional norm, what people usually do, and then you're like, but hey, it can also be like this. Have you considered this? Like to be a bit like the nagging voice, maybe even that is like, okay, like this can also be different. And like from what I've seen on LinkedIn, like it got really, really good traction. Like people are engaging a lot with it. So there, you managed to strike a chord with people. Like you managed to push into the pain.
Yeah, I think so. And it's really nice seeing that it resonates with other people too. So it's not just me feeling this way, but other people are feeling similar things. And I think that's how we create change, by collectively moving towards something. So it's about collective learning and collective shifting.
Yeah. And like for DesignShifts, like what would be like, when would the whole project be like a success for you? Is that measurable? What are your metrics?
So I was actually thinking about it. I was writing some like FAQs just for the website for myself. And I was thinking like about how did this start and how will it dissolve? So I think at some point, I think a part of good design is also like designing for endings and how will this end? I don't really believe that, I don't believe that it really ends. I think it kind of evolves into something different. But for me, like I see success is when people are actually like embracing these ideas and embracing these principles. So once we have shifted the initiative, it's no longer needed, and people are, they've shifted their posture, they've shifted their practices, they've shifted their perspectives, we have shifted the power within design. And once that's happened, and we've also shifted the purpose of design. And once that's happened, then the initiative is no longer needed. And that would be the measure of success in a way.
Which is a really big venture to do, like probably on like a global level in a way. But is the target group for DesignShifts everybody, or is it like a particular group of people? Because reaching everybody is impossible, right? But like to reach like a large group of people, or like a group of people that have a lot of impact in what they do, like let it be designers. Like, or that's like usually the easier, like the more one niches down, like the easier it is to talk to the audience. Have you identified who your target audience for DesignShift is, or who press like the most time on LinkedIn?
I do think that, I mean, obviously designers is a big audience for it because it has design in the name. So I'm a designer, so I speak from a designer's perspective. But I do believe very strongly that design is not just the person who has the design title. A lot of people are designing, and a lot of people, are creating things, or they're using design practices without maybe calling it design thinking or creative problem solving, but they're doing the things that we would label as design. The one thing I do need to find the audience a bit more, but the one thing that I do feel is like people who have joined the events or are engaging are people who are tired of the status quo and people who are ready to do something in a different way. So I'm not trying to convince somebody who feels like everything is the way it should be and nothing should change. Like it's not relevant for them. So I think that's one sort of audience type of mindset that people have that would
voice it, you bring it into like voice, like what the people are already feeling, the sentiment, and then maybe add like a new spin to it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of people who are talking about similar things. There's books about similar things. So yeah, I think it's more like a twist on something that people are already it's already top of mind for people.
Yeah, and like if you're already doing like online events for it, and probably soon to be like in-person events, like that's a great way for getting momentum. And I think you don't need to have like the whole journey mapped out, like for like where should this go exactly? Like sometimes life works its magical ways also, and you meet like one person that gives you like an idea, and then it's like, oh, like this whole new world is open. And like I think just doing bold things, like it leads to new bold things, and then something new can emerge from it.
And I believe in like having a vision and a loose plan, but then I think also, like you mentioned, learning along the way and finding listening to what's actually resonating with people, and then shifting towards shifting as well, embracing shifting for myself.
Just
cool.
Yeah, I love it. In terms of project, and like this is already leaning into the promotion for you, like if somebody wants to work with you, like how can they best reach you? Like in what stage should a project be? That it's like the client where you can help them move from A to B, or to help them apply like design techniques, design practices, social design thinking angle to the project. What would be a project that like that?
I think I'm stronger in the earlier part of a process. So I lean more towards strategy versus execution. So I really enjoy thinking about the full picture, coming up with the strategy, kind of like we mentioned, how do we get there? And also bridging. Sometimes I think in the world, there's a lot of good research that is being done. And then how do you take the research into practice, for example? And like bridging the gap between research and practice, I think I'm strong in, and I think that that's something that I really enjoy, and kind of picking things apart and collaborating in that way. So that's what I would say.
So like for the strategic parts, mostly, and like what would be like the size of a project like that? Like maybe you can make it also like or as detailed as you want it to be. Like what would be, because I think sometimes for people it's a bit difficult if it's so abstract, right? Then it's like, okay, like do I need somebody on my project who does social design? Do I not need somebody? It's because like then it's just like this binary question. But I think like if it's like the more concrete it is, and I think people often think in terms of like let it be website, video, logo, or maybe even products or services, like how they're designed. And that's maybe like also like an interesting nuance to go into. Like, is it only visual things that you help create, or is like if it's strategic also, like maybe the parts behind it, like what would be the output, what would be the input?
I think it's more like engaging with the strategy. So if somebody's looking for strategy, for example, and I think for me, the social design part is a lens to the strategy, for example. So like I bring the lens of social design to a strategic initiative or a strategic engagement. And usually that if somebody's working on a product or a solution that is focused on climate, or is focused on having a social impact, or that just understands that social aspects are really important to every single thing that we do, then that would make sense to like engage with me, or finding ways to collaborate in those aspects.
Yeah, you can be the sparring partner with a lot of like practical experience from all the projects you've worked on, and you can kind of shine a light on like some parts where people might not have thought yet that then significantly can improve the project outcome and where the project heads.
Yeah, and also figuring out like what are the communities that you're trying to serve with the solution that you're providing, and making sure that those people are heard and those people are at the center. Along
like
with
customer persona creation, to put it in a term that people might have heard.
Yeah. Not like personas and I have a special relationship, but yes, something like that.
Something like that. Okay, we can keep with that. And like where to follow you, Ida? Like you have your website and LinkedIn, like LinkedIn quite engaged as well. And then also your Medium blog, right? We will also put everything into the show note so that people can click directly. Any other places that you would add, you want to highlight?
Yeah, I would just say like for the DesignShifts project, it's just DesignShifts.org. That's where I'm posting. It's kind of a home for the project. So yeah, we can add that to the show notes too, maybe.
Yeah, that's fairly new, right?
Yeah, I built it maybe a month ago.
DesignShifts.org it was, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just opening a better future for and through design.
Yes.
Ooh, lots of storytelling. Amazing. Yeah. Awesome. That was super insightful. Thank you very much for taking the time, Ida. Really, really appreciate you being on the podcast. And have a beautiful day with lots of sunshine.
Thanks. You too.